It comes as no surprise to people when I tell them this, I love Moral Orel. You know that video we made a little while ago about the episode that got Moral Orel cancelled? And how I mentioned that I am so upset that I missed out on the show in its prime? Well, now I'm gonna make up for it. Now I'm gonna start making a lot more Moral Orel videos. I'm hoping to make it a bit of a staple on the channel like The Proud Family or Jimmy Neutron. And in order to do that, we have to plan to make a lot of Moral Orel videos. We've got 4 others in the works right now, and we're not even done yet. But today, we're gonna start them all off, I guess, technically speaking, start them all off unless you don't count the other video, with a character quest. You know, the show where we take a look at underappreciated or underanalyzed characters and tell you what makes them work? Yep, Moral Orel is full of characters that could have these. Characters like Florence, Reverend Putty, Clay and Blilberto, who will actually get theirs in January, or the subject of today's character quest, or rather, subjects, Shapy and Block. Upon hearing this, I'm sure all of you Moral Orel fans out there are saying, "You're kidding me, right? Shapy and Block? What do they have to make them work?" Let me tell you the unfinished coming-of-age story of Shapy Puppington and Block Possible. First of all, we have to start with Shapy Puppington because, given his last name Puppington, he's obviously connected with the main family. So, you know, Clay's the dad, Blilberto's the mom, Orel's the brother, and so now Shapy's the other brother, right? Yeah, well, that's true, but he doesn't quite fit in. Take a look at him next to Clay. Do they look anything alike? The answer is obviously no, because Shapy is, in fact, an illegitimate child. He is actually the product of an affair between Blilberto and Coach Danielle Stopframe. Stopframe only took part in this, though, to get closer to Clay. I don't necessarily know how that works, but oh well, it happened, and now Shapy has been brought into the world, and he is an unadulterated terror. This kid is a monster through and through. Even though he's 7, he barely speaks coherently, he screams in order to get his way, he throws temper tantrums, he gets angry at the drop of a dime. Basically every parent's worst nightmare. But how did he get this way? Well, first of all, Blilberto has been coddling him like crazy. She's still breastfeeding him even though he's 7 years old. So obviously he's being kept young. Not necessarily on purpose, we don't really know why. I kind of think it's just so that Blilberto can have a little bit more control over him because, let's face it, she has no control over anything else. And there's another reason for his behavior. For that, we have to look at Orel Puppington, his older brother. Older half-brother, but still, older brother nonetheless. Judging by before Orel, Orel never really acted like Shapy when he was younger. He was kind, he was sweet, and extremely gullible. Shapy is none of those things, except maybe gullible, but still, 2 out of 3 isn't bad. Well, it's clear that over the years, Clay and Blilberto have really checked out of their marriage. Although, Clay has never really been interested at all, so I'm sure that he was never an attentive parent to Orel, as has been confirmed in Before Orel once again. It's clear that Blilberto at least tried to make things work. All she ever wanted was that happy family and to be useful to someone. That someone would either be her husband or her child. But of course, with Shapy around now and Danielle Stopframe no longer talking to her, she realizes she's stuck in this unhappy, unlovable marriage with Clay, and now Shapy is the constant reminder of that, and so who cares? It's very possible that Shapy was gonna naturally have some behavior issues anyways, but it's clear that she doesn't care enough to make things better. Whenever he begs or complains, she gives him whatever he wants just so that he'll stay quiet. And Clay? You kidding me? He hates Shapy. He may not know who's the dad, or maybe he's in denial about it, but he knows for a fact that Shapy isn't his. So, he doesn't care. Not one bit. This causes Shapy to experience tons of neglect. Neither parent really cares about him, so he's constantly throwing himself into harm's way. Not on purpose, it's just because he's an unruly, undisciplined kid. Then halfway through the show, a new family moves in next door to the Puppingtons, and they are basically the exact same as them, only slightly altered. They even have an unruly, undisciplined, illegitimate child named Block. And he's basically the same thing as Shapy, although the two look absolutely nothing alike. At the end of the episode, the new family moves away. However, they end up taking Shapy and leaving Block with the Puppingtons, and neither family really realizes. Only Orel and the Possible's daughter, Christina, actually recognize it, but they can never seem to tell their parents. And Block kinda has the same development as Shapy. He's loud, he's undisciplined, he's extremely rude, but nobody does anything to stop him. And of course, everyone except for those two I mentioned think that he's Shapey and not Block. However, in the Season 3 premiere, Numb, Blabberta finally figures out that Block isn't Shapey, so she calls Mrs. Possible to get the kids switched back. However, not everything goes according to plan. Shapey's happy to see his mom again, but Block doesn't run back to the Possible house. Instead, he chooses Blabberta, causing him to get abandoned by his real family and then becomes an honorary Puppington. Yeah, Blabberta just takes in both Shapey and Block, and the two of them cause unadulterated agony in the Puppington house from there on out, for a while. Before we get to that, let's talk about why Block might have chosen Blabberta over his real mom. So I have two theories for this. One, my first idea is that maybe somehow the Puppington house was a lot better than the Possible one. Specifically, maybe Blabberta actually treated Block better instead of like neglect. He maybe was used to abuse or something, I don't know. Or the more likely one, and the one that doesn't require overthinking things, maybe he just saw Shapey hug Blabberta and thought, cool, we're doing this now, not really realizing what he was doing. Either way, now he has two brothers instead of one sister. He and Shapey get in a lot of trouble but still become the best of friends. However, that's not really gonna last too long because of a lot of things that happen in the house. Clay ends up shooting Orel in the leg during the hunting trip. Not only that, but he finds Dr. Potter's Wheel's handkerchief, putting two and two together, realizing that Blabberta had been kinda cheating on him when he was away. As a result of this, as well as finally coming to terms with the fact that Orel is probably never going to be like him and is too sensitive for his own good, Clay kinda loses it as we see in the episode Sacrifice. He finally goes off on everybody and fully commits to being the awful person he always was deep down. What does this have to do with Shapey and Block? Well, back home, they're visibly worried about what's going on. They know that something's happening and that it's bad news. Shapey even tells his mom,
when I'm thirsty, it feels how I feel when I'm alone.
That's the first time Shapey has ever spoken coherently. But keep in mind, Shapey up until this point was basically a walking hurricane, causing nothing but destruction wherever he went. So now he's finally sensing the moment and realizing that things aren't really going to be the same ever again. And judging by the look on Block's face, he realizes it too. And I'm not the only one who thinks this too, because the series creator has actually confirmed it with one of the few episodes that we found out about that we weren't necessarily supposed to. In other words, he told us about an unproduced episode that never got to be. And this one was about Shapey and Block finally growing up and maturing as young boys. We don't have much information about this episode, but it seems like this moment from Sacrifice really started everything off. All we really have is that they bond. But we also have seen them bond in the very first episode where they became brothers. Not to mention the episode where Block was first introduced. So this could only mean that they bond over something like this. Otherwise, it'd just be kinda redundant. Besides, given the fact that Shapey and Block basically only speak in one-word sentences, you can't really have an entire episode with them bonding unless they actually talk. And with Shapey talking at the end of Sacrifice, this has to be what it means, right? And even in the last episode, Honor, yeah, they kind of slap each other around a little bit, but they're not doing things like licking lighters or sticking sewing needles in their eyes. They're just horsing around like little boys do. And when Clay and Blabberta are having their fight in the hallway of the apartment complex, they start caroling. Not screaming, not fighting or anything, they're just having fun, thinking that this is what the family's supposed to do. This might seem like I'm reading too deeply into it, but look at everything that Shapey and Block have done before. When Dr. Chosenberg is stuck in the hospital, Block desperately wants a drink, and starts fighting and screaming. Similarly, when Shapey's supposed to be waiting for Orel to get back with his Christmas gift, he goes off to the nativity scene and completely destroys it. See, doing something like this is not in either of their characters unless they grew up. And it's no secret given the fact that Moral Orel was cancelled early that we missed a lot of important stuff. For example, Blabberta was eventually supposed to get with Officer Papermouth, and Florence was supposed to lose weight and finally find happiness with Reverend Putty. Not to mention the thing that I mentioned in the last Moral Orel video, Miss Censordoll was eventually supposed to take over all of Moralton, usurping Clay's authority. We got this set up at the end of Nesting, and we never saw any follow-up because the show got cancelled the very next episode. Many others who reviewed the show have noted that the storylines were either cut short, were rushed, or were seemingly completed off screen. And that seems to be what happened with Shapey and Block. But hey, at least we know for a fact they're okay now. Judging by Orel's wall when he's an adult, Shapey has now become a police officer and Block has now become a fireman. Both are occupations that require a severe amount of discipline. So yeah, they did grow up. They went from being nightmare boys to being respectable young men. I just wish we could have seen it. This is the show that made Nurse Bendy, who is basically a comic relief harlot character, extremely sympathetic. You feel for her when she's going through her issues in the episode alone. So to see them do the exact same thing with Shapey and Block, who've been nothing but background to comic relief characters at best, that would have been amazing. The signs were all there, and we have the beginning and end, just the middle was cut out. This is why I completely believe that if Moral Orel came out today, it would have been a gigantic success. And with the big underground movement that's starting to become mainstream, I don't see why Adult Swim doesn't give it another shot. I mean, come on, they're already focusing on heavy nostalgia stuff. That's what everyone's doing. Why not do Moral Orel as well? Especially with people begging and pleading for it to come back and finish what it started. And this is a guy who hates reboots talking, so you know it's severe. Either way, Shapey and Block were not only interesting characters when you look at their origins, but they also had some pretty good growth at the end of the show. It's too bad we weren't allowed to see it though. Well folks, thanks for watching the video. What'd you guys think? Who do you like better, Shapey or Block? I'm a Block fan myself, just saying. Comment below and let me know because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. Real quick, I'd like to thank our Patreon executive producers, Reziel, Leaf Razor, Sophie Burgers, Azarius, and Tanner Kapishki. If you too would like your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then consider donating to our Patreon, which has a link in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time!
Yeah!